Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Bubba and you're listening to Coffee Break, where we go over the week's most interesting coffee industry related news, podcasts, and resources. The goal here is to handpick 3 solid stories for you, a couple really good podcasts that I find, usually no more than 3, and any additional like events or resources that I find that may be interesting to you. In addition to the weekly one, I'm going to start producing more content, specific, maybe some interviews with some people, some local coffee shops, maybe some people in the coffee industry. If there's anything you want me to cover or produce or create, let me know in the comments below. Cool, let's go ahead and get into it. And the first article that I want to talk about is actually about Todd Carmichael. If you're familiar with Todd Carmichael, he is the CEO of La Colombe. He'll be stepping down to focus on water. If you're watching on YouTube, this is the guy right here. He also, the article talked about, it's a kind of a little bit of a half bio and then half kind of what he's working on with water. This is a picture, if you're again watching on YouTube, a picture of his family and the kids that he adopted in Africa. If you're not familiar with the TV show, I believe it's on the Travel Channel called Dangerous Grounds, where he goes and searches for coffee and all these kind of crazy, dangerous environments. It's a really interesting show. But part of the bio talks about how his whole life is focused on trying to do things the hard way. It kind of says here, one thing that he said even as a kid, he recognized that if he took the hard road, in any decision, he wouldn't be competing with as many people. Then he said, once he achieves something he wants, his perception of the thing itself changes in a fundamental way. So he's always growing, he's always challenging himself. And this is his partner, La Colombe, scrolling down. Okay, this is actually the facility that he built out, that he's focusing on. A lot of it's like carbonated water, different textures and mouthfeels, like being able to naturally get carbonate water. What he's able to achieve right now is, from what he's saying, a really pillowy kind of mouthfeel with the water and slightly sweet. It's pretty interesting. They are currently producing and selling his current version of the water that he's developed on the East Coast, with plans to expand here on the West Coast. Very curious to try this. I'm going to try to look online, see if I could buy some. Water. Who would have thought? Pretty trippy. But I mean, even with water, with coffee, like the better water you have while extracting coffee, you'll be able to extract more and better flavor out of it, and textures out of it, compared to just regular tap water. That's a whole other subject. But Todd Carmichael, dude's doing big things. The next story talks about a bunch of little coffee shops opening up in New York called Blank Street. They landed a deal, $25 million, opened up a whole bunch. These guys here, if you're looking on YouTube, these are one of the build-outs that they have. This is more of like the mobile coffee shop. And then they also have smaller brick and mortar stores, which are about 1/4 the size of a regular coffee shop. They opened their first one in August of 2020, I believe. And now they have about 14 locations spread across New York, the first one being in Brooklyn. Really interesting. The owners got the idea, and they're inspired by grab-and-go coffee and tea chain brands such as Kopi Kennigan in Indonesia and Hey Tea in China. It says whose rapid growth was made possible in part by relatively small or tiny retail locations. So we don't really have anything like that here in the Bay Area. So I'm really curious to see if they are successful, because this is something, or at least an idea that maybe somebody else could take on here on the West Coast. The next one is actually an extra story. It talks about a new brand identity being launched for Guatemalan coffees. It reminded me a lot of the Colombian coffee stuff back in the day when I was a kid, and all of the marketing and commercials that were made. I actually have one I wanted to show you real quick. This is actually the commercial that I remember watching growing up. I'm not sure if you've seen it. I just wanted to share it with you. A lot of memories.
More and more people are waking up to Juan Valdez and his 100% Colombian coffee. And so can you.
Buenos días.
Just look for Juan on the label when you're shopping. You can't miss him. 100% Colombian coffee. The richest coffee in the world.
But yeah, here are some of their new logos, some of their new font, some of the new marketing they have. Here says, join us for Guats next, like Guatemala. A picture of a bunch of flowers coming out of a coffee cup, Guatemala Coffees. Yeah, really curious to see how this takes off and if they're able to increase any revenue and sell more coffee from Guatemala. And the first podcast pick of the week is from Coffee Runs Deep. The podcast is titled Starting a Coffee Roastery from the Ground Up. The interviewee was Rich Stone with Memoir Coffee. He details what it took to build his coffee roastery from the ground up, all the money that's involved, all the time and energy and effort that he put in, how long it took, a lot of the challenges that he faced on the way up. Good conversation, really good information if you have been thinking about maybe building out your own roastery in the future. I'll put the links to the podcast in the show notes. The next podcast that I want to recommend is a pretty big one. It was the Global Coffee Townhall hosted by mapitforward, moderated by Lisa Farr and Madeline Longoria Garcia. It started with the question, what needs to change in the coffee industry? Really solid conversation, went from one topic to another, but a couple of the main points I remember getting from the event itself is people were talking about integrity in contracts and defaulting. A lot of stuff happening about producers or roasters defaulting on contracts that they have. Another question that was brought up or topic was who is responsible for letting consumers know of cost changes. So a lot of coffee in and of itself is actually still relatively cheap, but the cost to produce is pretty high. Very interesting to see that the price of your cup of coffee in your local store hasn't gone up much when it essentially it should. It needs to be able to pay for a lot of these wages and pay for really a lot of just the hands that coffee goes through on the way to it being produced. There was talk about potentially getting together and funding a group to lobby like Congress and such for coffee specific needs and the like. They talked about what tech is needed to be able to simplify the processes within the coffee supply chain from beginning to end. They did mention that a lot of these farmers and producers actually have a lot of systems in place already to reduce the overall costs and overhead and to be more efficient with their use of land and their space. They talked about how coffee shops, in order to increase their revenue, are increasing the prices on other items outside of coffee, like pastries and stuff like that. And also touched on the marketing piece of coffee and trying to come up with a plan or idea or something to help create more digestible messages for consumers in regards to adding value into what they are buying coffee-wise to justify increasing the cost compared to what they're currently having to pay. Really good conversation. The 2 hours went by really fast. If you have the time to check it out, definitely go ahead and check it out. I'll post the link as well in the show notes. And a big event coming up here on the West Coast, if you're in the area, is the San Francisco Coffee Festival, November 13th and 14th. I know I plan to be there. They seem to have a lot of things going on, a whole bunch of vendors, a lot of people producing a lot of coffee, a lot of different things happening, a lot of events, a lot of speakers. If you have the time to be there, cool. You can buy tickets. I'll put the link to the tickets in the show notes. And if you're there and you see me, go ahead and say hi. I always love to meet new people in the industry. And the last big event that's happening right now is a 2022 Roaster of the Year. This is specifically talking about the micro category. So the 3 finalists this year are Big Island Coffee Roasters in Hawaii, Little Waves Coffee Roasters in Durham, North Carolina, and Rabbit Hole Roasters in Quebec, Canada. One of the most fun things to do in coffee is to try other people's coffee to see how they roast in their style. So if you have the time, go ahead and check out their websites. You can go ahead and pick anything up from any of the roasters online. Cool. Well, that's all we have for this week. We hope you enjoyed the information. If you have any recommendations or suggestions on things that you would like to have see me produce or do or cover, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button so that we can get our channel in front of more people if you're able to. And hit the subscribe button to get notified of any of the most recent drops that we may have in the near future. Cool. All right. Till next time, you have a good day. Good weekend.